But TJ, so we've talked about Texas, we've talked about Penn State. Let's talk a little bit about this Ohio State Tennessee game and kind of, I was a little bit taken aback, or maybe not, because I'm an SEC fan and I know how insane every team in the conference is. But Tennessee went up north, right, to Ohio and essentially took over. That game day set was vast majority volunteer fans. There was, I don't know, I think Kurt Herbstreit said probably 30,000 Tennessee fans in the stands, and those are his estimates. That's a lot of fans that traveled up there. Everybody seemed really hyped, and then kickoff happened, right? But I mean, kudos to Tennessee, though. They traveled better than maybe anybody I've ever seen travel for a road game, and to a stadium that is, I think, known for being pretty stingy on tickets for visitors.
Yeah, it's interesting with these playoff games too, because you kind of wonder, in all credit, yeah, I'll start by saying all credit to the Tennessee fans that, I mean, I felt bad. I never feel bad for anybody because my team was so terrible that like I have no heart or sympathy left. But I almost felt bad for the Tennessee fans because they put so much effort forth and they worked so hard and they were so coordinated with the takeover. And then the team, if the team could have played with half that effort,
right,
they wouldn't
half
have gotten blown
part
out.
of the fans,
yeah. And so, well, I don't want to just say effort. Ohio State was just a better team, right? Like they were better, they played better, they coached better, they were more healthy, like all those things. It's not just that. I don't think effort was the problem. I just don't think Tennessee was as good as maybe we thought they were. But yeah, the way that they took over, I've never seen that before for a big game, right? Like Alabama goes, teams go to Vandy and they're half the stadium, and that's whatever. Like those aren't big games. But for a big game like this, I almost wonder. And this is not to take anything away from the Tennessee fans because it doesn't minimize their effort. But I almost wonder if some of these home teams that are big favorites at home just kind of have this expectation of, hey, we're going to win this game. If we don't win this game, I'm going to be pissed. So I'm saving my money for the next game. Like I'm saving my money for the neutral site, the next one coming up, because Indiana was not nearly the way that Tennessee was. Indiana was well supported. SMU, smaller fan base, like they weren't really a massive difference there. Clemson did a good job of traveling out. Now that was all orange. You really couldn't see it, but just talking to people that are around Clemson and stuff, I thought they did a good job. I almost wonder if there's a little bit of a, hey, we're going to go to the next game. Again, not to take anything away from Tennessee. That's not my point, because you still have to make the effort to get there. But I wonder if that's why you mentioned them being stingy with tickets. I wonder if that's why it's a little easier to get tickets, because Ohio State's like, yeah, we'll be in the semifinal. And if we're not, I don't want to go watch a loss. Kind of idea like that.
Well, that's interesting. If you listen to Kurt Herbstreit, he made some comments and he essentially said he thought part of the problem is that there is a fringe part of the fan base who wants Ryan Day out and doesn't believe in Ryan Day and felt like they could show their, displeasure by not showing up to this game. And then, they're probably back on the Ryan Day train now, right? After they blew the doors off of Tennessee and are rolling into round 2 of the playoffs. But I thought that was an interesting thing as well, an interesting thought process. And, listen, we got a lot of rabid fan bases in the SEC, so no shade to Ohio State, but this is a program who has fans who want their coach out and they're going to the second round of the playoffs. That's insanity.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's a different level of expectation at Ohio State. We all want to win a national title at the beginning of every year. But for Tennessee, it wasn't national title or die like it was at Ohio State. Even at Michigan, right? Where they just won it last year. Ohio State
was beat Michigan or bust. I don't know that it was even win a national title or bust, but it was sure as hell beat Michigan.
I don't know, man. With paying $20 million on their roster, I think
the most expensive roster in college football.
I think they expected to be in the. I think getting to the title game is the only thing that. Now, I don't necessarily think he gets fired or anything. Now, maybe if Oregon blew them out or something, that they would, there'd be enough booster pressure. But yeah, I do think that their expectations up there are. I mean, they're up there with Georgia's and Alabama's, where if it's not a national title, it's a failure of a season, and there aren't very many programs where that's the expectation. We all say, oh, that's the standard. Obviously in the 90s, that was the standard for us and y'all. in the 80s, that was the standard for Miami and in early 2000s. But like, that's not most people's standard, right?
Right.
Like it sounds good. It's, oh, it's national title or bust here. That is not very many people the way
Yeah.
Ohio State it is.
It
Like
is. Yeah.
the money they put in, the conference they play in,
Mm-hmm.
that has to be what their answer is. And yeah, I mean, could you imagine like they've been a good program. It's not like Florida and Florida State where both these teams have gone on runs of being really bad
Yeah.
and winning a few in a row, and then the other team wins a few in a row, and then another team wins a few in a row. Like they've been really, really good. And he's lost his last 4 games against Michigan. This time is a 3-touchdown favorite. Like,
Yeah.
I understand being upset. I understand being pretty frustrated. Michigan was terrible this year, and they lost. Like
this was the opportunity to get one from Michigan, right? If it was going to happen, it needed to happen this year. And the fact that it didn't is also wild to think that there's a chance they win a national title, but didn't beat Michigan, a not great Michigan team.
Yeah, at least Michigan would have a little way to troll there. Tennessee's defense, it doesn't really surprise me that Nico struggled. He's been up and down this year, and then Samson going out.
Yeah.
And then they had some wide receivers going out. But their defense, like well before there were any injuries or Nico struggling or any of this other stuff, their defense was down 14-0 in the blink of an eye. And that's probably what surprised me the most, because I think what we said was, well, they're going to keep it close because they can run the ball and they play good defense. Now, obviously, the running back going out is a big deal. But that defense was just, I mean, they were lost.
Yeah. Yeah. They looked like they had no idea what they were doing. They were outclassed by Ohio State. And it's just listen, not to take anything away from Ohio State's wide receivers. They have one of the best wide receiver rooms in the entire country, but it's not like Tennessee hasn't seen good wide receivers. And so I think that's part of why it was so shocking, is because this is a team that was battle tested, right? And you sure as hell did not look like it on Saturday night.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I will tell you this. I told you earlier, but I'll say it on here too. I was sweating because I knew what we were going to talk about if Tennessee, was even competitive in this game. And so, I was pretty happy with the result. I had no complaints. Sorry to the Tennessee fans out there.
I'm sure. You know what I also find interesting about this game, and you had in our notes Jeremiah Smith and talking about him being a monster, and he is. And the thing that I find very interesting about this is I have it on really good accord that Ohio State is having to pay, I think the number that I was told is 16 players to keep them from entering the transfer portal right now. Guys that they are having to, because the way that their contracts are structured semester by semester, they've taken their semester exams right now. They could go ahead and hop on in and leave. And that Ohio State is paying a pretty penny right this moment to keep their roster intact to be able to be competitive in these playoff games. And that is just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, it's really stupid, and I don't know. I don't follow any other like programs closely enough, like on social media. But if you think about it, like I can kind of remember when like the Battle's End, Florida State's collective, has announced deals. Yeah. And usually they announce those deals like a day or two after they're done, and they put it out right on social media. And most of them are pretty early to mid-December, right? Like when the kid signs with the program or signs his financial aid or whatever he ends up doing. And so if you think about that, Ohio State probably did write most of their deals.
Yeah, mid-December.
Around this time.
Heard that Smith has, put some feelers out there, had somebody put feelers out there for him or whatever, and he's looking for $2 million, but he'd be willing to jump ship if somebody came up with $2 million. And you just think about, like, you are a freshman stud on the most expensive roster in college football, headed into round 2 of the playoffs, having a dominant win in round 1. And it just, like, my head could explode thinking about that. But if Ohio State is going to potentially struggle to keep their roster together, what does that mean for the rest of college football?
Well, it means that college football needs to fix their calendar, and they need to not open the portal until after the national championship. Yeah. And then we need to put signing day back in February. Yeah. Right. Like the idea that because nobody's doing anything anyway, right? Like you're not allowed to have organized workouts. There's no, like, why is the portal? I mean, and we moved signing day back and back and back, and we've moved it back 2 more weeks now to where signing day is right after rivalry week. So you're losing out on those official visits. You don't have time to recruit guys postseason. The calendar is broken, and it's absolutely stupid that you would have to think about like that. The portal should not be open right now. It should open up after the national championship. when the season is over, like, could you imagine NFL free agency going on while the playoffs were going on in
Playoffs are going on.
January?
I just and think about even from like a budgeting perspective, right? And listen, I have very little sympathy for these universities, but their universities are not the people that are actually paying the athletes right now. Those are these third party collectives because it's not allowed to go through the university. So imagine that you've budgeted all of this for your rosters and then you realize you have this couple week window period of time where nobody's under a contract because that's not how you structured them when you sign with them. And you're literally having to come up with the cash to keep these guys to try and win a national title, which was the entire reason you brought all of them in to begin with and signed the contracts that ran through mid-December with them. It's just, it's a flaw in the system for sure that they need to fix, but I just can't wrap my head around people being willing to test the waters while their team had a legitimate shot of winning a national title.
I mean, if somebody was going to pay you $2 million, would you, you know, somebody was going to tell you that you could have $2 million if you didn't watch the next UF game, would you be like, all right, guys, I'll catch you on the next one. I'll catch you the next time we play.